Great. So thank you for joining us for this webinar. This is Getting Started at Crossref, an introduction for new members. Today's agenda, we will share with you information about getting started at Crossref, including some of the topics we receive the most questions from our new members. And these will include the importance of registering your content and its metadata, benefits and obligations, the role of persistent identifiers, your DOIs, and metadata, ways to register your records, updating and adding extra metadata, invoicing and billing, and we'll also have a Q&A session that you can contribute to if you like. If you have questions during our presentation, please write this in our Q&A box. I'll show how to do that on the next screen, not in the chat, and this will be easier for our moderator to keep track of and for others to see your questions. If you would like to say hello in the meantime in the chat and tell us where you're joining from, feel free to do so. This webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording and slides by email within the next few days. Okay. Since we're hoping this will be an interactive session, our intention is to make this easy to use for you. So we're using Zoom, and if you're not familiar with it, I'd like to talk about some of the features which are marked by the red arrows. For questions, please use the Q&A function there at the bottom of the screen to the right of the heart to put your questions and to be answered by our moderator. This makes it easier for us to monitor that Q&A section and to make sure we've answered your questions. We tend to use the chat box over here to the left of the heart to share links to resources that we're discussing during the session. And there's also this little React section, this React function, the little heart here, and you can use this to share your feelings about things. So thumbs ups, applaud, celebration, that sort of thing. And you can also enable captions and add automatic translation to the language of your preference. So just as a reminder, for those joining a little late, this session is being recorded and you'll receive the recording afterwards via an email. So who are we? There are three of us doing the webinar today. My name is Poppy Riddle. I have an academic career in bibliometrics, metadata quality assessment, and looking at how artificial intelligence uses metadata. And I'm a member of the technical support specialist team. And so I help you with questions from interpreting failure messages to what kind of schema should you use. I'll turn it over to Isaac to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Poppy. My name is Isaac Farley. I'm going to be talking during the second half of the call. So Poppy will speak through the first and I'll speak through the second. I am based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the middle of the United States. I've been at Crossref for about 8.5 years. And before I came to Crossref, I worked with a scientific society here in Oklahoma that works in geoscience. So I have some experience on the member side of things as well. And like Poppy, I spend my days answering questions about metadata coming into our system, metadata going out of our systems, and everything in between. I see lots of people from our new member base from all around the world. I see somebody from Thailand, somebody from let's see, yeah, South Africa, Denver, Colorado, Delhi. Welcome, everybody. Thanks. If you haven't introduced yourself and told us where you are, feel free to do so in the chat. I'll turn it over to Kathleen, who will be providing support during today's call to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I have been with Crossref for 7 years. Prior to that, I worked in open access publishing and in university libraries. So I was with PLOS, the Public Library of Science in San Francisco, and with the University of Hawaii in Honolulu. I am currently in Cleveland, Ohio, in the US, and I am also a technical support specialist along with Poppy. And I'll be doing the moderating today. So, the support today. So I will try my best to answer all of your questions, and please do put them in the Q&A if you have them as they come up. And I'll be providing lots of links in the chat as Poppy and Isaac go through the material.
Great. Thank you both. I'll add that I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. Forgot to say where I was. Hey, let's talk about your membership journey. There we go. So as a new member, you and your colleagues should have received a number of emails from our membership team with a lot of information about starting with your membership journey. And over the next few months, you'll be receiving more emails with more information about topics that will make this whole experience easier for you. So we'll be discussing a few of those topics on today's webinar. So when you filled out your application form, you ticked a box to accept our membership terms on behalf of your organization. So being a member comes with benefits, but also obligations to Crossref and your fellow members. And so we'll take a look at some of these in more detail. Becoming a member allows you to create a persistent identifier. That's the DOI for each object and to register a metadata record for that item. By registering your research objects with us and creating your DOIs and metadata records, your organization becomes part of a globally connected network of scholarly research, and this is growing each year. We have over 23,000 organizational members from 164 different countries, and all of these folks have registered over 160 million items with us. And I think that number is increasing rather rapidly, so that 160 may be a little outdated at this point. This DOI and its metadata record is then globally shared with hundreds of tools and thousands, probably more, users via our free open APIs. So this enhances the discoverability of your publications, making your content more likely to be found. Furthermore, the metadata provided by our members powers a variety of additional services that we have developed at Crossref, such as cited by and similarity check, and this benefits our members and, of course, the wider academic community. We are governed by our board, which is made up of representatives from our member organizations, and members are also able to vote for and stand for our board. This gives you a voice in Crossref governance. But being a member means that you also have obligations to your fellow members and the wider scholarly community. You should register DOIs and metadata records for everything that you publish going forward. Registering a DOI is not optional. All of your articles going forward should have a DOI registered. And you should make sure that you only register records for content where you are the publisher. You're taking on a long-term responsibility for stewarding the content and the metadata, and your name will show in the metadata as a publisher. This means, for example, if you are a university, you should only register DOIs for articles in the journal that your university publishes. You should not register DOIs for articles in journals that are published by other organizations, even if one of your staff is one of the authors. Now, once a DOI has been registered for an item, that DOI needs to remain the unique identifier for that item forever. If the content moves to a new website or is acquired by a different publisher, if it already has a DOI, then the metadata associated with that DOI also needs to be updated. It should show the new publisher and point to the new landing page. But the DOI itself does not change. It's really important that you don't register new DOIs for content that already has a DOI. If you acquire a journal from another member, and they have already registered DOI records for the existing issues, we transfer ownership of that journal title to you, and you should continue to use and display the existing DOIs. We can give you access to update the metadata for these existing records, even though the prefix on the DOI is not your prefix. So I'll be talking more about the structure of the DOI a little later. So when you register a DOI with us, you provide us with a resolution URL, a web address. And this is where you want the reader to arrive if they paste that DOI in a browser. This landing page needs to be a unique place to that particular item with enough bibliographic information so that the reader can feel comfortable and confirm that they've arrived at the right place. You should also display the DOI expressed as a link on the landing page, and I'll talk more about how you do that. You also need to undertake reference linking. Reference linking means that the list of references at the end of your articles where you display your DOIs are available. This means that anyone reading the reference list will be able to click on that DOI link to easily and persistently find the articles that your author has referenced. You should do this for all the references that have DOIs, even if the articles are published by other organizations. And we'll send this presentation around after the meeting, and so you can access some of these links. And just as a reminder, you should maintain and update your metadata for the long term. This is about maintaining this forever. Lastly, just as a note, and then I'll point about this later, is that you need to ensure that you pay your invoices on time. We'll go to the next slide and talk about why metadata is so important. So as we mentioned before, when you register a DOI with us, you contribute to the scholarly record. And we're going to talk about why depositing metadata is so important. So let's start with the type of metadata you might register. Not everybody will be registering journal articles, but as they are the most common, I'll focus on them in this section. So the most basic metadata for a journal article would be the journal, its full title, an ISSN, or a title level DOI, and of course its URL. There's also some issue level information about the issue number and its publication date, and of course article level information with a title and its publication date and its DOI and its resolution URL. That's the most basic data, but you can add more, creating a much more rich and complete record. You can add contributors and their affiliations. That includes authors and their ORCID IDs and institutions and their ROR IDs. And you can find out what those are using roar.org. Funding information is also wonderful to include in the record, and this can be the funder and individual grants. There are relationships you can add, talking about the versions, translations, references, or data sets that were used. And of course, you can also register updates to your publications, and this includes things like corrections, retractions, or withdrawal notices. So the basic idea is that the richer the metadata you provide to us, the better it is. It's really important because it helps make connections between all of these different records. So as you display your DOI on the unique landing page, these unique landing pages should contain the full bibliographic information, not only so users can verify where they've been, so that users can verify what they're looking for and they've been directed to the correct item. So once they click that DOI link, the DOI on your landing pages should be displayed as a URL. And lastly, the unique landing page where the reader ends up, it should have an easy way to access the full text of the content so that it's acceptable for that full text to be behind a login or paywall, so long as there's a landing page that's accessible to everyone. So paywalled content or subscription content is completely fine. A DOI can resolve to the HTML full text of the content if the page includes the full bibliographic information, and the DOI is displayed as a link on a separate landing page. So it is not good practice, though, to link directly to a PDF. When you create that direct link to a PDF, it will sometimes initiate a download, and that makes it difficult for end users to confirm that they're at the right place. And so as a Crossref member, it's important to keep your metadata record updated and as rich and complete as possible. So one example of this is if your resolution URLs or landing pages have moved over time. And so it's an important responsibility to update that URL for that DOI. So on this slide, I'm showing a couple of examples of what metadata looks like. So the metadata provided to our members is stored in our system in XML. you don't have to necessarily know how to create XML. We have helper tools that you can use to transform your metadata into XML behind the scenes. The important part about this is it means that everybody enters the same types of information, and this makes it consistent and machine readable. We can then make this metadata openly available to everyone through our free APIs and the whole scholarly community. And this makes it easier for downstream systems to ingest this information and make your content more discoverable. So in this example, in the upper right, you can see the metadata elements in red and the values in white. So we have the DOI here, we have the publication dates, and in the lower right, there's also an additional layer of metadata that gets added by Crossref. And this includes the publisher name, the timestamps, what journal it was deposited in, and when it was created. And probably one of the more interesting parts is the cited by count. So the important thing about, so as you look through the DOI records, you will see some of the other key metadata which members submit to us. And so this gives us ideas about the provenance. It provides basic bibliographic metadata. It also includes accounts for relationships between works, and it can include funding information and contributors and their affiliations. So the important part about our REST API is it is relied on by a large part of the research information community and beyond. And we receive nearly 2 billion requests each month through our APIs. So the diagram I'm showing now shows some of the types of tools and organizations that use our metadata. This is the outside ring, and the different ways that the diagram is used in the inside ring here. So our metadata is used by metrics and analytics tools such as Web of Science and Scopus. It's also used by library discovery systems to find content their researchers have access to. It's used by members themselves to highlight gaps in their metadata or check reference links. Organizations such as DOAJ make use of our metadata in the journal review process. And so this is how your content can be discoverable through this wide network. And it also provides information to others about where in the scholarly your system your content fits. Okay. So next I'm going to talk about the structure of a DOI. Okay. So many people associate Crossref with DOIs. So first, it's important to understand and remember that Crossref is not just about DOIs. We are not defined by a particular service, but by how we support the academic community as a whole. DOIs are not an indicator of the quality of a publication or the organization that registers it, nor is it a mark of the quality of the research being submitted. A DOI is a persistent link and identifier for a content item. So this is the structure of the DOI, and we'll be spending some more time on this. There are 3 sections. The red part is the resolver address. Each DOI is an identifier, but is also an actionable link. And so this means it's resolvable in a browser. The blue part here is the prefix, and this is assigned to each member when they join Crossref. The yellow is the suffix, and this is the part of the DOI assigned by the publisher and is unique to each content item. So let's look at these in more detail. When you join Crossref, you're assigned a unique prefix for your account in the format of a 10 dot followed by either 4 or 5 digits. In some older journals, you may see DOIs with prefixes that only have 4 digits, but in 2012, we started adding those with 5 digits. Some members have one publication, some have multiple. One prefix may be used to register all of your content, even if you publish different types of content, books and journals, for example. If you add a new title or publication, you do not need to notify us prior to registering content for that title. Once you begin to register content for that publication, the title will be added to your account. So there is no limit to the number of DOIs you can create, nor there is also no minimum required. So we recognize that every member has their own workflow and unique publishing schedule, and this could be daily, monthly, weekly, or even yearly. DOIs can be registered or updated at any time. You don't have to notify us if there is a schedule change on your end. Okay, let's look at the DOI suffix. So we receive a lot of questions from new members about creating a suffix for their DOIs. Suffixes, this end bit, are best when they include short strings that are easily displayed and typed and are opaque. This means that the DOI itself doesn't have any meaning on its own. The DOI suffix doesn't have to state anything about the item it is identifying. That's all done with the metadata. For example, information such as the ISBN or page numbers should be included in the metadata, not as part of the suffix. And while it may be tempting, using a pattern with human readable elements in your DOI suffixes can cause problems. Services and tools that use DOIs may, for example, try to predict future DOIs that are not registered. I'm sure you've all run across hallucinated DOIs at this point. So if you must use a suffix with a meaning, internal system identifiers can work. And of course, these should be carefully managed. Our best advice is that your DIY suffixes should be short, simple, and opaque. Don't include anything in the suffix that could change in the future, as your DOI will be around forever. When creating your suffix, you may use the letters A through Z. They can be uppercase or lowercase, the numbers 0 through 9, and certain characters such as hyphens or parentheses. If you're using the OJS platform, follow our instructions to set your DOI suffix generator to default. This will ensure that your OJS platform creates a random suffix for you each time. If you are using another method to register your content, you can always use our random suffix generator that I provided a link to here. This suffix generator does not register these DOIs, it purely generates them for your use. Okay, next let's talk about displaying DOIs and reference linking. DOI display guidelines. So this is how DOIs should be displayed. DOIs should not be posted on your websites until they have been successfully registered and the DOI is active. When listing the DOIs on your content, we have moved guidelines for displaying them on your website. It is really important for consistency and usability that all members follow these guidelines. One of the most important guidelines is displaying the DOI as a URL. That means it has this part in front of the prefix and the suffix. These guidelines make it as easy as possible for users to cut and paste or click to share Crossref DOIs. For example, if they're using a mouse right click to copy a URL. It also, using the full URL, gets users to recognize a Crossref DOI as both a persistent link as well as an identifier. And of course, it also enables machines to recognize Crossref DOIs as URLs. So once you've registered your DOI, it's important to display it on the top of the landing page, keeping the guidelines in mind. The landing page is the resolution URL that you provided when you registered your content. In other words, the place where the reader will likely be taken when they click on your DOI. The landing page needs to contain a full bibliographic citation. That way readers know they've arrived in the right place. It also needs to have the DOI displayed as a URL. There needs to be a way to access the full text of the article. And access to that full text can be controlled by the publisher. So it could be through a login or a subscription, but the landing page must be accessible to everyone. For open access content, a DOI can resolve to the HTML full text of the content. And if this page includes the criteria above, a separate landing page is not necessary. You can see in the example of a landing page on the right side, which contains the full DOI, the authors, the title, and a way to download the article. Make sure that the DOI you are displaying is resolving correctly. meaning that you can click on it and it will successfully resolve to the landing page. If you click on the DOI link and it resolved to a page that says DOI not found, it means that something went wrong and the DOI did not register successfully. In this case, we advise you to reach out to our technical support team, so people like me, so we can help you troubleshoot the issue. So I'd like to show you an example of not a suitable landing page. The problem here is that there isn't a unique URL for each article. There's just one URL for the entire issue. And so each DOI for these, not only can we not see the DOI, but it's still the same URL for each one. So this makes it additionally more difficult for the user. So let's talk briefly about ways you can register your metadata records. So as we've said, when Crossref members register their content with us, they include much more than just the DOI and the resolution URL. They include a range of other metadata, such as the article title, the journal name, the authors, their affiliations, their ORCID IDs, funding info, licensing info, and possibly much more. Metadata is all about the content that's been registered with Crossref and is held in our system as XML. Members can choose to register their content with us by sending us XML files directly. Or if you're not able to do that, we have helper tools available, like Metadata Manager. These helper tools provide an online form where you can type in information about your articles and our system turns them into XML behind the scenes. Our web deposit form is one example. We also have just released our Metadata Manager, which has more capabilities now that Isaac will talk about. And for members who host their content on the OJS platform from PKP, there's a Crossref plugin to help you add in metadata and then register it with Crossref. So we would like to hear some feedback from you in the Q&A. So for those of you that are here today, do you know if you will be creating and sending us XML yourself, or will you be using a helper tool like OJS or Metadata Manager? So if you know, drop us a line in the Q&A, so that helps us get an idea. And if you don't know, that's okay too. So next, Isaac is going to walk you through the registration process, and I'm going to turn over control to Isaac.
Thanks, Poppy. Get my screen all set up here seamlessly. Okay. All right. Thanks again, Poppy. Let's just take a look at the Q&A and see what we have for. I see some folks saying, actually in chat, I see some folks saying they're using Metadata Manager, Web Deposit Form, OJS. Jenny's leaning towards Web Deposit Form. Okay. So yeah, a nice smattering of folks and tools being used here. That's great. So I'm going to start this portion of the session by talking about OJS, but I'm going to go into detail about those tools that you're talking about. And so let's start with OJS. Oh, sorry, it's on the wrong slide. Because so many of our members uh, use OJS, several years ago, Crossref and PKP, the Public Knowledge Project, began a collaboration to create a less technical method for our OJS users to register metadata with us, so that publishers and journals can take advantage of Crossref services. So we started years ago and we developed a DOI XML export plugin that allows you to send basic metadata to Crossref from within OJS. And so I'm going to be talking about versions 3.3 and 3.4 today. We have supporting information about both of these versions on our website. And I will note that PKP did recently release long-term support for version 3.5. We'll be adding documentation on our site by the end of the month for version 3.5. If you're interested in version 3.5, I'll include, or Kathleen will include, a link to the OJS download and install page, so you can take a look at versions 3.5, 3.4, and 3.3 collectively. So I want to talk a little bit about Crossref plugins for OJS. I've got this across a couple of different slides here. So I'm going to focus this first one on OJS, the references plugin, which is available from OJS 3.1.2 version forward. So both OJS 3.3 and OJS 3.4 support the OJS references plugin. This plugin will allow you to use our API to check against plain text references and locate possible DOIs for articles. So the plugin will allow for display of reference lists on your article landing page within OJS, but it will also allow you to deposit those references to our system so we can make connections to, relationships to those references. And it's important to note that linking references functionality is a requirement of Crossref membership. So you want to take advantage of that. So this is a really important plugin that comes in with OJS, and I wanted to mention it right here at the top. When we share this slide deck with you later, you'll be able to come into this slide and click on the instructions here, portions, to follow that directly to where this plugin lives. In our documentation on the website, you will also find detailed videos and screenshots on how to set up your OJS plugins for Crossref. Currently, like I said, we have instructions for OJS 3.3 and 3.4. We're actively working on the documentation for 3.5 and videos for 3.5. So our goal is to fully support you with these new versions of OJS. Okay. I want to get into the details a little bit for those of you who are using OJS who um, think you may use OJS. So what I have on the screen here is one of the configuration pages from within OJS, the OJS DOI plugin. So this is one of the most common issues that we see amongst new users is here within this authentication within the plugin. So when you become a Crossref member, you receive a set of credentials that allows you to register content with us. Those credentials need to be properly configured into the OJS plugin. This is similar to I heard other integrations or saw other integrations questions about other integrations in the Q&A, and so this idea of entering credentials into a third party system is shared. So I'm going to talk about OJS specifically, but this is also something that other systems and other integrations require as well. So there are two types of credentials that we currently use in Crossref for new members. The first is called role credentials. Those role credentials contain only your role and the password. And this role credentials style of credentials, the type of credentials, is the most common amongst sponsored members. So if you have a sponsor and you're working with a sponsor, most likely you use just a role and a password. And your sponsor will either provide you with a password that you can enter into OJS, into this screen that I have on display right now, or they will help you with it by doing it for you. So that's most common for sponsored members. For our independent members, you use a different type of credential, which we call user credentials. This means that you and your colleagues have your own emails connected to the shared role of the organization. This role or username, as indicated in the OJS plugin, you can see the field is actually called username within OJS. It's the role itself is usually 4 to 5 letters, but the way in which you enter your username within OJS, you use your email address and the example on screen, support@crossref.org, followed by a slash, and then that role that we have provided you. Again, it's usually 4 to 5 letters. In my example, I'm using CrefTest, which is one of our internal usernames, and this is how it is entered within the configuration within OJS. Again, this is a common sticking point for many of our new members is entering that username correctly. There are some additional plugins that we've co-developed with PKP so that you can send in additional metadata to us. So beyond content registration, which I was just talking about, like the basic kind of core metadata that's submitted when you submit a journal article, we also have additional plugins. So there's support for reference linking and depositing references. If you're interested in similarity check using the Authenticate tool, there is an opportunity to use that plugin as well. And then if you're including funding data in your submissions, um, then you can do that as well and link up to our funder registry. These plugins vary by version, which is why it's good to make sure that you're using an up-to-date version of OJS. PKP, the Public Knowledge Project, they're continually working with Crossref and themselves to improve the level of overall DOI export support provided within OJS. And so as they launch new versions, that support grows. Um, I also want to note here, I just want to pause and say that it's important for me to say OJS is run by PKP. It's not run by Crossref. We are close partners with PKP, but we are not ourselves providing OJS. It's a third-party tool. We can help with deposits. We can confirm whether a deposit has been successful or whether it's failed. We can provide some limited support for OJS problems, but we do not provide direct support in setting up your OJS instance. I've put a link on the slide here that links over to the OJS documentation, and also they have a very rich and active community forum where they answer questions about OJS as a whole, about integrating or about implementation, about direct support for the tools and services that PKP provides for OJS. So that's OJS. Now I want to talk about our newest helper tool. It's called Metadata Manager. I'm going to go through an example for you. So this is our tool, and one that we have been growing over time. And so this is the interface right here on screen. I wanted to show a screenshot of Metadata Manager to you. It's available at manage.crossref.org/records. And this tool can be used for journals and journal articles, reports and working papers, dissertations, grants, and just last week, we launched support for books and book chapters, which we're really happy about. And you can do that right there at the bottom on the link, manage.crossref.org/records. So using this tool, you can create new records or you can edit an existing record. So you can import that record into Metadata Manager and edit it right here. It doesn't require that you rekey in the information. In today's demo, since I want to show how to register new records that have never been previously registered with Crossref, I'll be selecting the new record button on screen here. For those of you who are thinking about or who have looked into Metadata Manager for your journals, I just want to note that your journal needs to have an ISSN to use Metadata Manager. If you do not have an ISSN or do not yet have an ISSN, then you'll need to make use of our web deposit form, which we still support. But I'm going to be showing Metadata Manager here for journal articles, and I'm going to be using an ISSN in my submissions. Okay, so the first step in Metadata Manager after selecting that you want to create a new record is to select the type of record that you wish to register. And like I said before, we support journals and journal articles, reports and working papers, dissertations, grants, post-publication updates, and then that books and book chapters, which we just launched support for. And like I said, I'm going to select here journal articles and show you what that looks like. So after you select journal article, you are then taken to a form where you're going to be entering your data into these various fields. And so this is all of your information about the article. We start on this form. We decided in this tool to start with the article. So it's really clear that you're entering information about the article. So you can see in my screenshot here, I've got article title, article DOI, article landing page URL, all very important pieces of metadata that we want registered for your journal article. All of those have an asterisk next to them, all three fields, and that indicates that those fields are mandatory. Some of the mandatory fields beyond article title, DOI, and the URL itself are authors, ORCID IDs, and the institutions where those authors are based. So that is some of the required metadata that you would see below this for the article itself. Once you've entered in your article metadata, then you will you will be prompted to select a journal um, to to register that article against. So here I've selected the Journal of End-to-End Testing. You do have the option to provide us with issue level metadata, but you don't have to submit issue level metadata. It may be easier not to. Many of our newer members don't organize their journals into traditional issues and maybe an ongoing publication. And so if you see an optional metadata field that you are not collecting data for, please do feel free to leave that empty. It's better to leave those optional fields empty than to put in metadata that's not accurate or that you're not collecting. So for issue level metadata, that's optional, and it may be fine and easier and better to leave that empty. Once you've hit once you've added all of your information, then you may select submit to send all of this information to us. So I've entered the information about my journal article. I've told Crossref which journal that journal article lives under. So the Journal of End-to-End Testing is what I've selected. And then on my next screen, I can see that all of that record is now sent to Crossref. And I can see here a real-time verification of that record being registered with us. And so you can see on screen there is a DOI. I can click that DOI and it will resolve to the URL that I have registered. There is a note here that there are links to the submissions for this record, so you can actually see that it was successful. You can see the metadata. If you want to go and look at the XML, you can click on these links within Metadata Manager to see the XML that was built by this helper tool. And we separate out the core metadata and the references into two separate submissions so that we can process those quickly for you and give you back a real-time result. The most resource intensive thing that we do around submission processing is matching references. So if you're sending us a journal article that has 30 or 40 different references, it takes us some time to go out and look in our corpus of 185 million DOIs and match those and return results. So we separate out the core metadata submission and the reference submission into two submissions. The records are still contained into one, but we process those separately, and that's why you see two submissions here. And you can go and check on those right here on the screen. So this is what that previous slide is what a successful submission looks like, but sometimes we have errors, and this error is an error with the journal title that's in our system does not match what was previously registered, and so we're flagging an error here. And so we do have errors that come up from time to time. Hopefully you won't encounter too many of those. If you do, I put a link here to at the bottom of the slide to common problems that we see in our error logs. So I've included that there. We have some other registration methods that our members use. Someone in the chat said that they were thinking about the web deposit form. So not all of our members are able to or want to create their own XML, or maybe they don't want to use OJS. We do have alternatives. You can use the web deposit form. The web deposit form is a very basic form that allows you to enter data into fields, and then that creates XML for you. You can use the web deposit form to register journals, books, conference proceedings, reports, dissertations, Crossmark policy page, and to provide us with supplemental metadata, which I'll talk about here shortly. So if you're keeping notes, the things that are not supported by Metadata Manager would be journals that do not have an ISSN. So you would need to use the web deposit form in that case. If you're registering conference proceedings, we do not yet have support for that in Metadata Manager, although that's coming. Um, and then if you're registering cross-mark policy page or providing supplemental metadata, then you'd want to consider using the web deposit form. Um, you
Isaac,
can
can I
use,
can I interrupt you for 1 second? We had a question
yes.
about print ISSN versus digital ISSN since we're
Mhm.
on that topic. Does
Sure.
it matter which one?
No, if you have both, then you should supply both. But we only require one. So if you only have a print ISSN, you may supply just the print ISSN. If you have only an electronic ISSN, you may supply only the electronic ISSN. If you have both, supply both. You startled me, Kathleen. Sorry. Thanks for the question
Sorry.
in real time. No worries. Yeah, so in the interest of time, I'm just going to continue on here. If you have other questions about differences between the web deposit form or direct XML, do let us know. There are links here to documentation about the web deposit form and direct deposit of XML. And included in this link is samples of XML if you need to follow that, if you're considering creating and registering your own XML. Um, One of the obligations of membership is to maintain your metadata. So updating it, it's a living thing and it changes from time to time. And so you should update it. You should enrich it if you can. There is a fee when you initially register a DOI with us and provide us with a metadata record. So those initial registrations do incur a fee, which I'll talk about here in a second. But we never charge you to update metadata, to enrich metadata. And so that's always free of charge. So if we have an existing record in our system, we encourage you to enrich it over time, clearly update it over time. And what are some examples of that? We want to make sure that the record is clean. So once you start depositing metadata with Crossref, you want to make sure that um, you identify and correct any problems. Let's say there's a typo in one of your author's names and you determine that. You can go back and correct that. That happens from time to time. We're humans. The machines we build sometimes make mistakes. Sometimes we make mistakes. If you find an error, you want to make sure that you go back and clean it up. You want to make sure that your metadata is complete. Sometimes you may not be collecting all of the metadata at the time of registration. You may have decided that you want to offer to your community the ability to register ORCID IDs or grant information, and that becomes available to you afterward. Maybe an author says, "Hey, I've got an ORCID ID. Can you add this to the record?" Yes, you can. You can come back and provide that information later to further enrich the record. And then also you want to make sure that your record is up to date. If a and somebody asked about this in the chat, if a record moves from one landing page to another, we allow you to update that metadata so that the URL can update, so that the DOI link can point to the new page. We that is we want your DOIs and your DOI links to work forever. And so resolution URLs are one thing that we allow you to change. We allow you to change it very easily, and we never charge you to change that if your content moves from one page to another. Okay. Yeah. So there are these other tools allow you to update records one by one as well. So OJS allows you to find the record you wish to update. You can leave the relevant field updated. You can delete it. You can modify it, and then add it back into your metadata to update it. And then you would just need to use the OJS Crossref import export plugin to send us back that metadata, and you'll need to be using OJS 3.1.2 to do that. You can also use the web deposit form to update your metadata. That requires that you rekey in the metadata. So if you're considering using the web deposit form, one thing to consider is that the update process is a little more cumbersome from the web deposit form since that tool is not sophisticated enough to retrieve an existing record, pre-populate the form, and allow you to update that record. Metadata Manager does allow you to do that. So the web deposit form requires you to rekey in the metadata. And then for XML, we would require that you redeposit the XML to us, For anything that's updated, let's say you're deciding that you're going to include ORCID IDs, you would resubmit the XML just as it was before, but add in the relevant fields or modify the relevant fields and resend us that XML file with a new timestamp to indicate to our system that it's a new submission. So we do allow all of these tools to resubmit and update metadata as well. We also have some ways to do this in bulk. So we allow you to add funding data, similarity check URLs, text and data mining URLs, and license information to a record using the web deposit form. So you can do that through a CSV upload. Again, it's just mapping these various fields through a CSV to an existing record to enrich it. And there is more information at that link there about how to do that. I wanted to specifically talk about updating resolution URLs in bulk. If you move to a new website, for example, if your journal article has moved to a new website, then you'll want to provide us with new mapping, new URLs for that DOI or those DOIs. And you can do that in bulk. You can contact us at support@crossref.org and we can help. We also allow you to do this self-service, and there's a link here that will walk you through how to provide us with a text file to update your URLs. Those change all the time. I'm sure that we've got 2 or 3 tickets today about URLs changing, and members are always doing that themselves as well. We do receive questions from members about their invoices and payment options, so I wanted to discuss a few of those right now here at the end of the session. Got a few more slides. So for most members, there are 2 sets of fees associated with Crossref membership. The annual fee, which covers your membership, and then the content registration fees, which are one-off fees for each item you register with us. So we've been talking about journal articles and books and conference proceedings. Each one of those records you registered with us would incur a content registration fee and an invoice. Those fees, those content registration fees, will vary by record type or content type and the publication date of those records. The membership invoice is sent out at the beginning of each year to cover the forthcoming year. Comparatively, content registration invoices are sent out quarterly. So you'd get one at the beginning of January, the beginning of April, the beginning of July, and the beginning of October. And these content registration invoices are sent out after you have registered your DOIs. So we charge you after those registrations for those DOIs. The reason why we do this is because we charge different fees depending on the record type that you're using that's being registered with us and whether or not those records are current or back year. And we use that by pulling in the publication date to determine if it's a current year record or if it's a back year record. And so you will see that indicated in your invoice. One thing to note here is that you may not receive a content registration invoice every single quarter. If the amount of content you register in a quarter totals less than $100, we roll that on to the next quarter. And this is to avoid small invoices for things like international charges. We don't want to we don't want you to be paying lots of small invoices if we can avoid it. So if you haven't reached $100 in a specific quarter, then we'll roll that over. And then at the end of the year, if you haven't reached $100, then you'll receive an invoice for the whole year's content registration fees right at the end of the year. So we try to do that and be reasonable with our fees so that you're not having to pay lots of small charges. We email the invoices to your billing contact, but you can also find your invoices at any time using our payment portal. And if you want to pay through the payment portal, you can use a credit card or you can use wire transfer. So those are some common questions about invoicing. How can you get help? Many of our members have questions along the way. We're here to help you navigate our systems and our processes. That's why we're here. So do ask questions of us. You can reach us at here's a number of different places where you can get us. So our documentation is available in English. There's lots of information there. You've seen Kathleen providing you with links to various bits of the documentation, so you can take a look at that. If you have questions, you can reach out to us on our community forum. Lots of our members are interacting there with us or with other members to get their questions answered. The documentation is in English. in the community forum, we encourage all languages to be used and asked. And so you'll see some questions in various languages in the community forum. You can always get us at support@crossref.org if you have a specific question. Um, I've included some information about PKP and OJS here. PKP also has a community forum. It's very active. So lots of different ways to get in touch with us. If you have questions, if you want to interact with the community, please reach out, get in touch with us if you have questions. Two more plugs, and then we'll pause. I'll pause. So you've just joined. If there's one opportunity for you to take advantage of, one thing worth putting on your calendar, it's this one. It's our annual meeting and board election. It happens on October 22nd. There are two sessions meant to accommodate everyone, one earlier in the day, one later in the day. You can pick whichever one suits you. There's a link here at the bottom of the page here for you to find out more information. This is what we'll be talking about on the agenda. We'll be talking about member practices. We'll be talking about system redesign. We'll be talking about some projects that our data science team is working on. We'll be talking about community projects, and we'll also be voting for and hearing about our new board that is elected. So part of membership, one thing that comes with membership is your ability to vote on who makes up our board and set our direction. We're a member-driven organization. We want to hear from you. We want you to be a part of making decisions about governance and where we head. So our board election is part of our annual meeting, so you can learn about the board election and the results there. Register for the meeting here at the link at the bottom. If you're interested in being one of those community projects that we talk about, that we illuminate and highlight, we are accepting 250-word abstracts for the Crossref 2026 annual meeting. You can find out more information at that same link at the bottom. If you do have projects, and those could be about metadata, they could be about retrieving metadata from our APIs, they could be about collaborating across different members, could just be talking about your Crossref journey. We'd love to hear from you. You can submit until Friday, September 4th. And I haven't given you much time for questions, but I'm able to stay on for a couple of minutes if there are questions that have not been answered.
We do have one. Sorry, hopefully I'm not startling you this time.
No, I expected this time, not startled. Thank you, Kathleen.
Um, Sorry about earlier. I just thought while we were in it, it would make sense just to answer
No,
this quickly.
absolutely.
About conference, this is also a metadata manager question. It was about conference papers, and we do not support that currently with metadata manager, but we are working on it. And one of our participants asked about a timeline for that. I didn't know, Isaac, if you
I don't
know.
have a specific
Okay.
timeline, but I have been telling people in the coming months. I hope it'll
Okay.
be sooner than that, but I think if you check back with us in October at this time, they'll be there. Uh, yeah, just this person asking the question. Thank you for that question. I want to make sure that I don't overpromise. So I think at the latest it will be mid-October. I'm hoping for them to come sooner. Many of the other record types have surprised me at how quickly we've gotten them in there. The complexity of conferences is the hierarchy. Anytime there's hierarchy, which we have a conference series, and you can have conference proceeding, and then you can have conference papers under that. That hierarchy creates some complexity in the way in which we design the helper tool. So that's why it's taking that's why that record type is taking longer than things like dissertations and working papers because of the hierarchy that's involved there. But yeah, October.
Thank you. And I do, sorry, Jenny, I didn't mean to ignore you. I did want to answer this or ask Isaac if he had information on it because I'm not sure. The question is, I'm an archivist who has been contacted by another department within the university to create a DOI for a white paper they published on a wiki. Can you speak to creating DOIs for white papers published via a wiki page?
Yeah, most oftentimes those are registered as either reports or maybe like a book section. It kind of depends on how the wiki is organized, but based on the fact that you're talking about a white paper, I would think that would be a report or working paper. Um, Jenny, if you have more information, if you want to share, if you want to write us at support@crossref.org and just send a link to what it is you're trying to register, we can give you guidance on that. But I'm thinking that we would probably say reports or working papers. And those can be registered using Metadata Manager or the web deposit form. So you have a couple of different options. Anything else, Kathleen?
Sorry, trying to type in answer.
That's tricky.
Maybe you can answer this one live while I'm writing other answers.
Sure.
As responsible for a journal, are we responsible for the articles to have all references with the DOI? Sometimes due to the type of articles references used do not have it. Um,
Yeah, not everything that so everything that's published in a journal is considered a journal article. So back when I worked for a journal, we might have um, citable work, citable items that didn't have references, and I'm thinking maybe like a review or something emerging that maybe didn't have references. It's about news about the society or news about the journal or something that you want to give a DOI so you it can be referenced, but maybe doesn't have references itself. Um, so in those cases, you may just have some quote journal articles that don't have references, and that's okay. We wouldn't require that, you all of your journal articles have references if you're not collecting references for them. So in those cases, you would just leave those blank without references, and that's why it makes it hard when you're looking at statistics to get all of your journal articles to 100% coverage for references because not all, again, quote journal articles, we classify anything that's in a journal as a journal article. Um, there's just some record types that don't have references, and so it's hard to get it to 100% if you're looking at statistics. I hope that answered your question. The other part of it is like we don't require that you register references themselves. We want you to. We think it's a good use of your money and our resources, but you don't have to register references. You do have to link your references on your landing page, but you don't have to provide the references in your reference list if you don't want to, if you choose not to.
okay, we've answered all of the questions that were open in Q&A,
Thanks,
and
Kathleen.
I think that was all of them that were in the chat as well.
Excellent. Well, I'll just put up this slide that says thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and participating, asking your questions. We enjoyed hearing from all of you. Thank you, Kathleen, for answering those questions. Thank you, Poppy, for presenting. I enjoyed it. Like I said, we will have this recording available to you in a couple of days. We'll follow up with an email so you have the recording, you have the slides. Welcome to Crossref. We're glad you're here. And if you have questions, reach out to us at support@crossref.org or on our community forum at community.crossref.org. And yeah, we'll look for you there. Thanks all.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.